Hello everyone, my name is Justin Bellman, and today I would like to talk to you about how I would personally organize the current Harry Potter spin-off series, Fantastic Beasts, and where to find them. First of all, a little bit of housekeeping. Let's change the name of the series from Fantastic Beasts to something that really gets across the point of what this series is, which is the conflict between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. So let's call it like The Rise of Grindelwald, or The Elder Wand. For our sake, definitely not scripted. Let's call this the Elder Wand series. Second of all, the titles of each of these movies is going to be based off of a different fictional book within the Harry Potter mythos, as it should be. And finally, my series is going to be a trilogy instead of a quintilogy because that's too many movies. Let's get started. Elder Wand Part 1, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So this movie can stay pretty much about the same. I do like Newt Scamander being the character that reintroduces us into this world, and I think his story is just quirky and interesting enough that we can keep him as our main character for the first movie at least. I like his loose and lightly mentioned connection to Albus Dumbledore, and also setting this movie in the 20s gives us a unique perspective on the world. I dig it. Keep the movie virtually the same except for a few minor things. Get rid of that magical mind-erasing Thunderbird at the end. It's bad, and I think that they should have to deal with the consequences of their actions. Also, maybe add one or two Jude Law Dumbledore flashbacks into this movie, similar to how they did in Crimes of Grindelwald. Put those into this movie instead, because my trilogy is going to be a lot more Dumbledore-centric. Additionally, after this movie ends, let's be done with Credence. I love Ezra Miller, but I think the purpose of Credence should be to show how evil and manipulative Grindelwald can be, and I feel like that's done really well, but let's keep it contained to this movie only, because that is really the purpose of Credence as a character. The Obscurus stuff is fun, but it's confusing, and I think we can leave it out. Also, add a little bit more about Grindelwald's history in here, like how he was the one who hunted down the Elder Wand and stole it from Gregorovich's wand shop. And finally, add something at the end about how him and Dumbledore used to be partners. Whether that's at the tail end of the movie or in a post-credit scene or however you want to do it, put that in the frickin' movie. Elder Wand Part 2, A History of Magic. For this movie, we're going to go back in time to 1899, and keeping up with the motif of having authors as our main characters for right now, we meet our main character, Bathilda Bagshot. According to the Harry Potter fandom wiki, Bathilda may have been a teacher at some point, possibly at Hogwarts, as Hermione Granger refers to her as Professor Bagshot when referencing her work. So we're going to use that to get us back to Hogwarts. She can be a very skilled Transfiguration professor starting her first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. But things are afoot at Hogwarts, as they often are, under the current headmaster, Headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black. Headmaster Black was the least liked headmaster in Hogwarts history, so let's play with that a little bit. Let's have there be some corruption amongst the teachers, something that the students don't really pick up on, except for one student. The head boy, winner of the Barnabas Finkley Prize for Exceptional Spellcasting, British youth representative to the Wizengamot, and the gold medal winner for the groundbreaking contribution to the International Alchemical Conference in Cairo, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. This boy wants nothing more than to be the smartest person in the room at this age. He's noble and curious and brave like Harry, but he's also smart and cunning and maybe a little dangerous, just like our boy Tom Riddle. Show hints of who he will be, but also show me that he's a little asshole right now, because he's supposed to be a little shit right about this time. During this part of the movie, Bathilda and Dumbledore develop this sort of reluctant Dumbledore and Harry type relationship. There's a mutual respect there, but Bathilda is a little hesitant to trust him. But ultimately, she will come around when he helps her stop something nefarious that Phineas Nigellus Black is doing at Hogwarts. Maybe the staff of the school is split when Dumbledore and Bagshot discover, maybe with a little bit of help from Dumbledore's best friend Alpheus Doge, that Headmaster Black is trying to stop the admission of Muggle-born students from entering Hogwarts. So basically this movie would be Hogwarts Civil War. We can get a little bit of info into what Hogwarts was like during this time of like mass corruption and racism. We can maybe show some of the conflict between Albus and his younger brother Aberforth. But overall this movie, the second movie in our Elder Wand series, should be about Bathilda Bagshot, her first year at Hogwarts, and her experience with a young Albus. The movie can finish off by showing Dumbledore leaving school on the Hogwarts Express, arriving back in Godric's Hollow, and Bathilda Bagshot's great nephew coming to live with her, a brilliant young man by the name of Gellert Grindelwald, who young Albus has always reminded her of, and she believes that they will go on to do great things. And that brings us to the final movie in our trilogy, The Elder Wand, Part 3, The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore. Okay, so fair warning, I'm going to go into an immense amount of detail with this third movie, mainly because this is the one that I saw clearest in my head, and it's the one that I want to most get into your head about why this turning into a trilogy and why making it into this specific trilogy could be such a great idea. But get ready for a wild ride and a lot of fan service and fun in part 3 of the Elder Wand series, The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore. This movie is going to break our little motif of having the authors be the main characters of these movies, because Rita Skeeter does not play, to my knowledge, really any fucking part of Dumbledore and Grindelwald's life, or at least not enough for me to care. This movie is going to take place in 2 time periods concurrently, the quote-unquote present of 1945 and the quote-unquote past of 1899, with an epilogue that takes place sometime in the 1960s. I would lay this movie out unlike any of the other Wizarding World movies thus far, having events that are happening in the present mirror events that happened in the past and vice versa. It's not a new storytelling technique by any means, but it's something we haven't seen in this franchise so far. This movie can start by having Dumbledore teaching Transfiguration at Hogwarts in 1945. He is the best Transfiguration teacher they have ever had, and this is of note because we know how good Bathilda Bagshot was. He loves working with students, and he's keeping an eye on one student in particular who will be graduating this year, Tom Marvolo Riddle. But his close watch on Tom Riddle is sidetracked when he is approached by current Minister of Magic Leonard Spencer Moon. The minister tells him, unbeknownst to the rest of the Ministry of Magic, that he has become aware of the whereabouts of one Gellert Grindelwald, and Dumbledore doesn't want to hear any of it. Then we go back to the summer of 1899. It's the middle of June, and Albus and Gellert have been sending owls back and forth to each other for a couple weeks at this point. They decide to meet up for the first time, impressed by each other's knowledge and ambition. Gellert hints at a potential future plan, and Albus hints that he might like Grindelwald as more than a friend. But when Albus goes home, Aberforth makes it very clear that he does not trust Grindelwald. 1945, Dumbledore is appealing to Headmaster Dippet to bring back a boy who was expelled as the gamekeeper of Hogwarts. He tells him how this boy, Rubeus Hagrid, was wrongfully expelled when the Chamber of Secrets is open 2 years prior. Dippet agrees to think about it. When Dumbledore leaves Dippet's office and returns to his own, he arrives to find the Minister of Magic there once more holding a copy of the Daily Prophet. Before Dumbledore can even turn him away, Minister Spencer Moon shows him that Grindelwald is gaining power, and not only that, he's gaining followers. He starts listing off names like Caro and Abernathy and Scamander. Dumbledore stops. Newt? No, it's not possible. Last time Dumbledore checked in, Newt had been working for the Beast Division at the Ministry. The Minister tells Dumbledore that Newt Scamander quit the Ministry to go pursue Grindelwald, but instead he failed and fell under his influence. This feeling of failure, that Grindelwald has now not only risen to power, but has taken someone that Albus knew as a friend and maybe turned him into an enemy, pushes Albus over the edge. Dumbledore knows that getting Newt Scamander to enter Grindelwald's ranks is Grindelwald's personal invitation to get Dumbledore to come and find him. Now Dumbledore has to decide if he's going to take the bait. After talking further with Minister Spencer Moon, it turns out that Spencer Moon and Headmaster Dippet had already found a replacement for Dumbledore, someone who could take over the Transfiguration position temporarily while Dumbledore's off getting revenge on Grindelwald, because they expected that at this point he'd want to go, and they understood, so they took precautions. His Transfiguration replacement would be a young woman from Spencer Moon's Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Minerva McGonagall. After a moment or two more of contemplation, Dumbledore agrees that he has to go. So the rest of the movie kind of goes like this. 1899, the love story between Dumbledore and Grindelwald starts to grow, as well as the conflict between Albus and Aberforth. 1945, Dumbledore decides to leave and rescue Newt. He packs up his things and goes back to Godric's Hollow to reminisce and procrastinate one last time, where he comes across an old book that he will go on to gift to one Hermione Granger in about 52 years or so. The Tales of Beetle the Bard, which is marked with a little symbol that Grindelwald has co-opted as his own, but Dumbledore knows to mean something more. Gellert Grindelwald tells Albus Dumbledore about the Deathly Hallows. Dumbledore agrees to help him search for them, but it's also clear that they seem to have very different intentions with what they're going to do with the Deathly Hallows. Aberforth overhears these plans. Dumbledore apparates to the Leaky Cauldron, where he finds his old friend Alpheus Doge. He wants him to come along with him on this adventure, but Alpheus is terrified of Grindelwald, obviously, because he's like Wizard Hitler. But he does know of something that might be of interest to Albus Dumbledore, which is the location of another Deathly Hallow, the Invisibility Cloak. He tells Dumbledore that Fleamont Potter was in the Leaky Cauldron recently bragging about this invisibility cloak he has. Of course, a lot of people have invisibility cloaks, but he was bragging about how his is the best, and that struck a chord with Alpheus and figured he might tell Dumbledore. Dumbledore figures if he can convince Potter to give up the cloak, then they can be one step closer to stopping Grindelwald from becoming the Master of Death. Aberforth confronts Albus while Albus is writing a letter to Elphias Doge, who's currently traveling in Greece. Aberforth warns Albus that he cannot trust Grindelwald. Albus just accuses him of not wanting him to be happy. Aberforth tells Albus to think of Ariana. It's only been months since they lost their mother, Kendra, and it feels like Aberforth's been doing everything around here while Albus has been off thinking about these plans to take over the world. Albus tells him that Aberforth is misunderstanding his goal, and it's not about world domination or enslaving all the muggles or whatever. It's not like that. But Aberforth tells Albus that he's a disgrace and that their mother would be disappointed. Dumbledore brings a begrudged Elphias Doge to Fleamont Potter's mansion. You see, this is true. This is actually canon that Fleamont Potter got rich after making a hair-growing potion. So this guy is loaded. And an asshole. So this makes for kind of like a funny scene to break up the tension of the movie, and it also shows how Harry came into that metric fuck ton of money. At first, obviously, Fleamont denies knowing about the existence of the actual Deathly Hallow, the invisibility cloak, but he can't help himself from bragging, so he does admit that he has it, but he refuses to give it up. While Elphias is feeling hopeless, Dumbledore turns to him and says, "Hey, I heard you are one of the best duelers in the wizarding world." And Potter's like, "Yeah, what of it?" Dumbledore bets him that if he can beat Potter in a duel, then he gets the cloak. Potter agrees, they duel, Dumbledore wins, cause he's Dumbledore. Dumbledore takes the cloak, and he promises to give Potter the cloak back after the war has been won. But Potter warns him he doesn't think the war is that close to being won. Elphias emphasizes he'd like to go home now. Dumbledore delightedly takes his old friend back to his little pub in London, and then decides to apparate to Nurmengard, where after almost playfully defeating one or two of Grindelwald's lackeys from underneath the invisibility cloak, he comes face to face with someone that he does recognize, Newt Scamander. And he finds out that Newt was never under Grindelwald's influence, but he was actually working with a number of Spencer Moon's undercover Aurors and other agents and secret societies that were waiting for Dumbledore to rise up and face Grindelwald. And this part can potentially include some American side characters that we saw in the movie a couple movies ago. Fantastic Beasts Were Fine. You got your Tina, you got your Queenie. We could do some of that. It'd be fun. He tells Dumbledore they'll move on his signal, and Dumbledore says he's done waiting. It's time to finish this. Grindelwald confronts Aberforth in front of the Dumbledore house. He tells him to stop messing with Albus, and him intervening in their plans for the greater good has caused Albus's mind to be clouded. Aberforth tells Grindelwald to listen to himself. He's a child, and he's talking like a dictator. All-out war breaks out amongst the ranks of Gellert Grindelwald. Dumbledore, concealed under the cloak, goes to the highest point of Nurmengard, where he finds no other than Gellert Grindelwald. And he's been expecting him. It's been a long time. Aberforth says that if Grindelwald doesn't lay off of Albus, then he'll be forced to take care of things himself. Albus comes out of the house to see what's going on, as Aberforth has one hand on his wand. Albus pulls out his own and casts Expelliarmus. Aberforth's wand flies out of his hand behind him, right as Grindelwald casts the Cruciatus Curse on Aberforth. Albus is watching all of this happen, and from a hole in the fence behind him, we see the face of their younger sister, Ariana Dumbledore. Grindelwald gives Dumbledore a grand speech about all of his plans and how this is exactly how he expected it to go down all those years ago. There would be people who don't understand, and then there would be the people who were right. Grindelwald reveals the Elder Wand from behind his back, and thanks Albus for bringing him another Deathly Hallow. He summons the invisibility cloak. Dumbledore stuns Grindelwald, summons the cloak back, puts it in a pocket that's bigger on the inside because he's Dumbledore, and both Dumbledore and Grindelwald brandish their wands. And we leave this standoff for this one. Albus has his wand pointed at Grindelwald with a shaking hand as Grindelwald's torturing Aberforth on the ground. After devastating hesitation, Albus casts Rictus Semper on Grindelwald. Grindelwald flies back, and Albus offers Aberforth a hand up, and Aberforth refuses. Aberforth scrambles on the ground for his wand, picks it up, and points it at Albus. Albus Dumbledore, Aberforth Dumbledore, and Gellert Grindelwald all have their wands pointed at each other. The duel begins. Grindelwald tells Dumbledore that he doesn't want to hurt him. Dumbledore tells Grindelwald that he'll always love him deep down, but it's time for his reign of terror to end. The duel begins. Then we're cutting back and forth between Dumbledore and Grindelwald at the top of Nurmengard Tower, and the Dumbledore brothers versus Grindelwald down in Godric's Hollow. As the fights get rapid and more intense and closer and more intimate and harder to follow and more confusing, it begins to be interspliced with images of the small pale face of Ariana Dumbledore from behind the fence. In slow motion, in silence, with no music, Ariana Dumbledore steps out from the yard and intervenes. And in this confusing array of a light show, something hits Ariana Dumbledore. and she falls to the ground. And we see the light leave her eyes. This duel is legendary. Dumbledore and Grindelwald are apparating and disapparating all over the place, all over the world even, trying to splinch each other in the process. And finally, Grindelwald grabs Dumbledore, and they apparate to Godric's Hollow. Grindelwald reminds Dumbledore how weak his family made him. Albus and Aberforth are crying over Ariana's body. He reminds Dumbledore of how much better off he was just being associated with him. A young Grindelwald flees the scene. Remember how much Aberforth hated you, Dumbledore? Aberforth punches Albus at Ariana's funeral. When was the last time you even talked to your brother? To any of your friends? To anyone outside of this little tight-knit circle that you keep? You probably haven't even told anyone about me. Dumbledore looks him dead in the eye. What is there to tell? There's a final fight here at Godric's Hollow, Grindelwald firing unforgivable curse after unforgivable curse as Dumbledore duels with more finesse and skill than we have ever seen. He's confident at this point in the movie. He knows what matters. He knows that no matter how he felt for Gellert Grindelwald as a young boy, it was a different man that stood before him now. Dumbledore catches him off balance, stuns him, disarms him, and catches the Elder Wand. Grindelwald is on the ground, weak and shaking, as people from Godric's Hollow start flocking to see what's going on. All of the people in this little wizarding town start applauding at the scene of Dumbledore standing over his defeated enemy. Dumbledore's trying his best not to cry as he disapparates. The cloak can go back to Fleamont Potter however you want it to. Minister of Magic Spencer Moon recommends Dumbledore as his replacement, and Dumbledore, of course, declines the position. And Dumbledore goes for a drink with his good friend Alpheus at the Leaky Cauldron, where he should have been all this time. And now we've reached our epilogue, sometime in the 1960s. We see the back of an older wizard as he's walking away from the camera and towards the beautiful skyline of Hogwarts Castle. He passes by the groundskeeper, a kind, young half-giant by the name of Rubeus Hagrid, who greets this older wizard as the new headmaster of the school. He passes by the newest member of staff, a young woman who is skilled in transfiguration far beyond her years, Minerva McGonagall, who also welcomes the new headmaster. We see him walk into a large golden room with hundreds of students seated at 4 long tables as there's candles seemingly suspended on their own hanging from the ceiling. He stands at a podium in front of the staff table, looks out into the crowd. Everyone gets quiet as the camera turns around, and we see older Albus Dumbledore as he smiles. Albus Dumbledore is finally home. End of the movies, end of the trilogy. There we go. So with this specific story that I've concocted, some pacing could be changed around and some events could be moved from one movie to the next, but that's the basic gist of what I was thinking could be the case if they wanted to write a good sequel to these Fantastic Beasts movies. But as much as I can sit here and criticize, I'm not the one tasked with having to write these movies. Thank God. But anyway, I'm sure this won't please everyone, but this is my personal pitch for how I would do Wizarding World spin-offs about the Dumbledore versus Grindelwald conflict, especially because it seems that this final battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald is where these movies are heading. I personally think that it was weird for them to keep Newt around in the capacity that they did, but maybe having him barely in it like I do isn't the solution either. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, I hope they're able to have some of these cool historic moments in the Harry Potter universe put to screen. And honestly, at the bare minimum, I just want real verbal confirmation that Grindelwald and Dumbledore were a couple. Because they were. But anyway, let me know what you think of my take on the franchise in the comments down below, and let me know, what you would want in your perfect spin-offs. Would you prefer that they don't even go this route at all, and maybe do something with the Founders, or do something with the Marauders? Let me know all that stuff in the comments down below. But anyway, this is just a completely different type of video from what I normally do, but it was just a lot of fun to do. So like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video, I guess, if you want. If you liked it that much, maybe do it. I don't know. Make sure if you subscribe, you hit that bell so you're notified every single time I upload a new video, because I'm extremely inconsistent. So if you like my content, you should definitely do that. And I will see you guys next time.